This segment is sponsored by the Richmond Sentinel, providing news, entertainment, and human interest stories in print and online.
Well, if you are a fan of sports in this country, you will no doubt recognize our next guest. She has been with TSN since, 2002. You can currently catch her on the anchor desk for Sports Desk on the 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific time newscast. She is joining us from Toronto, my old friend. She's not old, but I have known her forever. It is great to finally have Jennifer Hedger on our show. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Jim, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be talking to someone in Sweet Dance.
It's great to have you. It's been a while. I got to tell you, I've known you a long time. It's amazing when you're friends with people, you don't know their full bio. I did not know you had been at the station that long, or the network, I should say. Mm-hmm. But when I looked at your bio, and of course, you've been there that long. I want to talk to you about some broad stroke issues. You've been there 21 years now, 22 years.
Yeah.
What have you noticed being the big difference between then and now? Obviously, social media, but what do you see from your side of the desk in that viewpoint?
Well, I mean, a lot has changed. So much has changed. Some stuff has stayed the same. But as far as, when I started at TSN, having a woman hosting SportsCentre was like, this is a curiosity. Not that there hadn't been women before, but there wasn't anyone on the desk when I started. There were a couple women reporters. Sherry Hargrave was working on SportsCentre as well. But it was kind of a bit of a novelty act, to tell you the truth. So there's way more women in the business now, which is awesome. And I would say too, not just women hosting sports. I think that they've come a long way as far as having women's in roles as analysts and play-by-play. When I think of like Cheryl Pounder, when I think of Doris Burke, who does the NBA down south, and Andrea Kramer and Hannah Storm are calling NFL football games now. And we see a lot more women in expertise roles in sports, and that never would have been the case 21 years ago when I started. So that sort of evolution, I think, is great, especially for women who love sports and women who want to be in the business that I'm in. The job itself, and this is not a surprise to anybody, but the sports media business is shrinking. We see that when we see cuts everywhere. It used to be a situation where you would go to school and then you would go to Dauphin, Manitoba or Yorkton, Saskatchewan, and you would work at the small station and do the highlight, the high school athlete of the week. And that's how you would start, and you would work your way up to being a national broadcaster. Well, those stations don't even exist anymore. You can't go to Dauphin and go be the local sports girl because that station doesn't even have a sports department anymore. So things have changed as far as, YouTube is a way now, I think, that people sort of find their way into sports, and just completely different path, I guess, to get into the sports market. And once you're there, you got to do it all. You got to be on Twitter. You got to be able to write. You got to be able to shoot your own stuff. You got to be able to present. The business has changed so much. The sports themselves, I think we've come not so far when it comes to women's sports. As much as women are working in sports now, we still don't watch the WNBA on a consistent basis. They don't have a national television deal in Canada. We don't have a women's professional soccer league in Canada as they do in the United States. We don't have a women's professional hockey league, which is crazy when the best women's hockey players in the world are from Canada. So I think as far as women's professional sports is concerned, we're still lagging behind.
It's interesting. We were talking last week about bringing country together. I'm trying to think of the last time where in professional sports, our country was brought together. I certainly was watching the Stanley Cup playoffs. I was happy that Vegas won. I can't figure out why they can do something in 6 years that my city's team can't do in 50. But and with you guys in Toronto, I'm preaching to the choir. And I was thinking the last time I remember really coming together was 2019 with the Raptors. I might be missing something in professional sports, and because you mentioned the women, and they have certainly given us lots to rally around in terms of soccer and hockey. Do you got a special memory? Because you certainly have covered a lot of great events, including the Olympics.
Well, for me, speaking of the Olympics, I know you were talking about pro sport and this is amateur sport, but I think we peaked, like national pride in Canada peaked in 2010. Those Vancouver Whistler Games, even the people who had the bread nut circuses signs on their windows. I remember traveling from the airport to Whistler to broadcast those games, and you would see the protesters and the bread nut circuses, and it was like, okay, I get your point. You feel like the money's misspent. And honestly, when we left Whistler to go back to the airport after the games, it was almost embarrassing seeing those signs in the windows, because those Olympic Games did more for this country than, any political movement or any sort of, I don't know how you could get more of a shot in the arm than what those games did for us collectively. Bringing people together, making us feel Canadian, making us feel like we were all in the same team, all pulling in the right direction. And I don't think it's been that good since, to tell you the truth, Jim.
She is, long time at TSN, folks. You see her doing everything on the network. Look for Jennifer Hedger on TSN. Jen, thanks. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Jim. Go Canucks. I think that they're going to do it before the Leafs. I honestly do.
That's not saying a lot.
just a Stanley Cup in Canada would be a real treat. So let's pray for that.
Yeah, 30 years. It has been 30 years. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
This segment was sponsored by the Richmond Sentinel, providing news, entertainment, and human interest stories in print and online.